After turning on the power, the start screen is either the menu screen or the reprocess standby screen. The start screen is interchangeable between the two and can be reprogrammed under Settings. If the menu screen appears, the options to be chosen from are Reprocessing, Functions, Replacement of consumable items, Log, Setting, and Information. To reprocess, select the Reprocessing button. The Reprocessing Standby screen has a display with the following options displayed: Model number of scope, ID status of scope, program number, process time, alcohol flash indicator, and heat LCG indicator. Press the Display Information button to display information on the current disinfectant solution. Hold the internal ID type endoscope connector or the external ID tag over the ID reader section so that the reprocessor can read the endoscope information. The ID tag does not have to touch the ID reader, but it must be kept parallel to the reader. The OER ELITE can reprocess specific types of endoscopes simultaneously. For details on which endoscopes can be loaded together and how to correctly load them into the reprocessor, refer to the list of compatible endoscopes connecting tubes. This equipment features an RFID function that keeps detailed logs of who reprocessed which endoscope, under what conditions, and when it was reprocessed. It also records physician information. This equipment also features a manual input function which enables the user to input the procedure ID data. An ID can be entered by the software keyboard on the touchscreen. The ID list can be edited on the List Management function. Press one of the program buttons on the touchscreen to select. Programs 1 to 4 differ mainly in their times for auto leak test modes and channel monitoring modes. The reprocessor has the ability to remember which of the 4 programs was selected for the last reprocessing of the endoscope. The channel monitoring mode has 2 functions. The first is channel connectivity monitoring, which monitors the connection status of the connecting tubes during the reprocessing program. The second is channel blockage monitoring, which monitors the channel blockage of the endoscope's suction channel due to a foreign object coming in during a reprocessing program. If PCM is displayed on the standby screen, Channel Monitor is executed in the cleaning and disinfection process. If FCM is displayed, Channel Monitor is executed in the cleaning, disinfection, and rinsing process. The endoscope auto leak test can also be executed automatically by selecting the reprocessing program. First, fit the ring of the retaining rack correctly onto the temperature sensor of the reprocessing basin. Remove the biopsy valve and any other accessories from the endoscope. Set the endoscope's control section on the left of the index pin on the depressed part of the reprocessing basin and wrap the insertion tube clockwise around the retaining rack from the outside towards the inside. Make sure that the insertion tube's distal end is placed within the retaining rack. Wrap the universal cord counterclockwise around the inside section of the retaining rack. Place the universal cord under the hook of the retaining rack. Place the endoscope connector above the drain port. Adjust the positions of the insertion tube and universal cord to minimize overlapping. Position the scope ID tag right below the boot to avoid overlapping. Put the biopsy valve and other accessories in the washing case. Make sure to open the biopsy valve and disassemble the other accessories that can be disassembled. Put the main bodies of AW channel cleaning adapters in the washing case and place the indicator plates outside of the washing case. Close the washing case cover so that the chains of the AW channel cleaning adapter are not caught between the case and the cover. Place the chains of the adapter in the notch of the rim. Now connect the connecting tube to the scopes. If you activate the connection guide setting, after your scope ID is recognized through RFID, a connection guide screen provides the information about the type of connecting tubes required for the endoscope, as well as the location of the connectors that these connecting tubes are connected to. Select the connecting tube that matches the endoscope by referring to the connection guide screen. Be careful not to kink the tube. Disconnect any unnecessary tubes. If scope ID is entered by the software keyboard on the touchscreen, select suitable connecting tube by referring to the list of compatible endoscopes connecting tubes. Connecting tubes are attached to the OER ELITE by matching the colors and the number of the labels as instructed on the connection guide screen. If the connecting tube is connected to the wrong connector, for example, the connecting tube for the first endoscope is connected to the connector of the second endoscope, then channel blockage monitoring and channel connectivity monitoring cannot work properly. The auxiliary water tube, the MAJ855, can be reprocessed simultaneously with endoscopes. Attach the MAJ2138 connecting tube to the auxiliary water supply port of the endoscope. Attach the auxiliary water tube to the MAJ2138 connecting tube. If reprocessing the auxiliary water tube together with the endoscope, the auxiliary water tube cleaning setting should be activated. Before setting the auxiliary water tube, temporarily place the indicator plate of the AW channel cleaning adapter on the washing case while loading the auxiliary water tube. Insert the equipment side connector of the MAJ2138 connecting tube into the connector on the reprocessing basin so as to match the colors of the labels as instructed on the connection guide screen. Wrap the auxiliary water tube clockwise in the inner area from the universal cord. After setting the auxiliary water tube, place the plate in the original position. If the venting connector of the endoscope or the equipment side leak test connector is wet, wipe it thoroughly with a clean cloth moistened with alcohol. Select the leak test tube that matches the endoscope by referring to Connection Guide screen. Now connect the leak test tube to the scopes. Be careful not to kink the tube. Disconnect any unnecessary tubes. When the leak test setting and manual cleaning is activated, select either Yes or No, depending on whether or not the endoscope has been cleaned manually, and whether or not any leak was found during leak testing. Then press the OK button. If the user ID setting is activated, the user ID can be scanned into the system. Hold the user ID card over the ID reader of the equipment to scan the ID of the operator who loads the endoscope. The same can be done for the physician ID. Hold the physician ID card over the ID reader to scan the name into the system. Press the Edit button of the Procedure ID area on the ID information screen. Press the Set button for the ID to be recalled. If loading the second endoscope, place its control section to the left of the first endoscope's control section. Position the insertion tube and universal cord in the same way as the first scope. Scan the second endoscope's ID tag in the same way as the first scope. If the ID tag is built in the endoscope, bring the endoscope connector in parallel with the ID reader of the equipment. Place the second endoscope's connector on top of the first endoscope's connector and adjust the position of insertion tube and universal cord to avoid overlapping as much as possible. Please put the accessories in the washing case in the same way as for the first endoscope. Please connect the connecting tubes to the second scope and the OER ELITE in the same way as for the first endoscope. Please connect MAJ2138 to the second endoscope and the OER ELITE in the same way as for the first endoscope. Before setting the auxiliary water tube, temporarily place the indicator plate of the AW channel cleaning adapter on the washing case while loading the auxiliary water tube. Wrap the auxiliary water tube clockwise in the inner area from the universal cord in the same way as for the first endoscope. After setting the auxiliary water tube, place the plate in the original position. Please connect the leak test tubes to the second scope and the OER ELITE in the same way as for the first endoscope. Input user ID, physician ID, procedure ID. Set the stylus pen by fitting the hole around the pin of the retaining rack. Check the connection between the endoscopes and the OER ELITE before starting reprocessing programs. Also, check that the connecting tubes and leak test air tube are not kinked. Check that the cover of the washing case is closed and that the washing case is placed inside the retaining rack. Also check that the chains of the AW channel cleaning adapter are not piled up and the indication plate of the cleaning adapters are placed between the hooks. Always place all accessories only in the washing case. Make sure that the highest point of the endoscope is located lower than the index line height. Only the endoscopes and endoscope accessories can be put into the OER ELITE. Do not put endotherapy accessories, cleaning brushes, or mouthpieces into it. Close the lid, taking care not to bend the tubes. Also make sure that the lid does not touch the endoscopes.